North and South, China, Dominican Republic, Colombia, Iran, Russia. Did I leave anyone out? Who did I leave out? Japan, I apologize. And, but seated one day, I met a young man who left his country, as you all did. He left it permanently because of something he was feeling. And that connected me to him because 100 years ago, my parents left Russia. And when he told me that he was a political asylee, I went to look up on that machine that you all know how to operate, and I looked for the criteria. And the criteria to become a political asylee here in America, and we have a professor here who will expand on that perhaps, is your race, your religion, your politics, or your social group. And moving is painful. To a new apartment is one of the traumas of life. To move to a new country when you're under stress. When we get rid of looking at the presidential candidates today, we get glimpses of those exiting from Syria, a war-torn country, marching days, months, weeks across Europe to find freedom, to find comfort level. And these, when I was a child, I loved famous sayings. I didn't always remember what the historical point was, but one of those that I loved very much was Tom Paine. He wrote, "These are the times that try men's souls." Way back then. I'm using it today. And this young man, Yosha Gorshkov, it's okay the way I said it, was looking for his sense of freedom for who he was. And he took a very dramatic step. And I'm asking you to welcome Yosha.
Thank you. I can speak without microphone because it's a little bit loud. But
a bit slower because
okay,
of the accent.
okay. It's very delightful to be here in this day, and I'm very happy that you have me here and you invited me because it's very interesting. It's sitting inside the church. It's unusual to people who are from Russia because we had for 74 years atheistic society and didn't believe in anything. That's why I was rising up a little bit in different perspective. But I have to say that my story has begun not 100, not 200 years, but 300 years ago when my ancestors came to Russia unwillingly because they were German completely and they were settled down in Russia because they had to cultivate new lands. And this story is about exile, because I feel in exile, and this concept of exile always follows me. And recently I read very dramatical news from Russia, because Russian Ministry of Health declared that homosexual people are sick people, and they added into the list of classification of diseases that homosexuality is disease now. It's sickness in Russia, and we are coming back to the Soviet Union. Because during the Soviet times, it was very common sense that people who are strangers, who are others, their pathology and they're sick and they're crime. Criminals outlaw. And yesterday it was declared by our government. It means that a lot of people would come and would escape, as I did. And actually, it's very... Only when I came to the United States, to New York, I started to realize that our life there in Russia was very dramatic, was very traumatic and repressed. When you live in Russia, you never think about it. You have to stand up and you have to live your life, you have to step forward and you have to step up, you have to live somehow. And when I was 12 years old, I realized that our family is different, because I never knew that we are German, that we were repressed by Stalin during the Stalin repression in late 20s, and my grandmother never mentioned until her death, never mentioned that we are not Russians. We are not belonging to this society. And I started to realize something different inside of me, because I never will get Russian culture. And when people ask me where I'm from, I can't say from Russia, because I never felt the place to belong. And because I was born in a very small town, surrounded by prisons where a lot of political dissidents spent their time during the Soviet regime, and I was rising up by my mom, who was and still is non-conformist in terms of Russian society, and my grandma never cared about public opinion. I guess I inherited this non-conformism from them, and during my youngest years, I already knew that I'm different. But it was difficult to accept, because you was living surrounded by people from the conservative parts of Russia, from the conservative families with patriarchal patterns and some role models. But I was lucky, because my mom never raised me like a typical man in terms of masculinity. You have to take your dolls, you have to take your cars, whatever you want. And I was lucky in this sense. But when I entered to school, I realized that a lot of young people, they're very collaborated with the system, and they try to bully me and try to persecute me and try to beat me up because of difference between me and them. It's very interesting, because in 90s we had this great opportunity to live freely, because the Iron Curtain fell down, and perestroika came up, and glasnost came up, freedom of speech, and we felt that something new inside of our society, and new issues started to came up, like homosexuality and prostitution, whatever. Everybody started to talk about issues which we never knew during the Soviet times. And secretly, when you're struggling with yourself, with your identity, I got some information about different lifestyle. They call it lifestyle, but it's not lifestyle. It's something which you're born with. And when I was in maybe 6th grade, we got the good sexual education. When firstly, one woman, she's a psychologist, she told us that there are a lot of different kind of families and partnerships. This is a man and woman, this is a man and man, this is a woman and woman. It was very progressive, because Soros stepped forward to Russian society, and they transferred some materials from the United States. And we started to feel, okay, maybe it's not a disease, maybe it's not a pathology. But unfortunately, despite the government efforts, people still feel strangely. People still didn't accept us, and people still were very suspicious toward this strange stuff, strange thing. And when I turned 13 years old, I firstly experienced these sexual intentions, attraction to male bodies. It was painful, because you don't know who are you, and you have to leave. And when we went in the resort hotel, accidentally it's Sochi. Now it's a very famous resort, which symbolized, I guess, the Putin's regime mostly, because of Olympic Games, because of persecution, because of different stuff. And I was struggling with myself for 1 year, because nobody supported you, because I never told to somebody. It's very difficult, it's very hurtful, but I spent 1 year working with myself, speaking with myself, crying sometimes, but never show these feelings to the audience, to my classmates, because you have to be strong. You already inherited this cold blood, you already inherited somehow German blood, and German people sometimes very strict, and my grandmother was very strict, and that's why I never showed these fears. Otherwise, people would hurt you and give you pain. That's why I started to realize that I have to leave somehow, and I came with the idea that I have to leave, escape from this small town. It was the first thought about escaping. And even when I was 4 years old, I always used to say to my mom, I want to live there than the lady with torch. I don't know why, but I was dreaming about the United States, about Europe, because my relatives lived there. Because when my family were repressed, they split family. Some brothers of my grandmother went to Kazakhstan, Germany. Some of them escaped to the Canada and the United States. But the connection was broken during the 60s when my great-grandparents passed away, and we never had this connection. And I'm going to reveal my family history here, because here is the Mormon archive, and maybe some people know about our genealogy and something like that. And that's why the first idea of escaping at 14 years old, and I was struggling to enter to the university. And when I turned 17, I escaped from this, but I really thinking that if I move to another city, I would feel happiness, I would get some sense of safety, of protection. And in 2002, I left my home city and settled down in a huge 1 billion people city in Russia, Perm region, when I was a student at Perm State University. And first time I came up with the idea that I have to solve my identity issues, because the problem for LGBTIQ community, the problem not only for heterosexual people in Russia, is lack of education, lack of information, lack of knowledge about everything. And I don't know how I survived, because during the 90s you didn't have internet. You never had some books, you never had some Amazon that you can order quickly and faster. Now, that's why I just realized that I have to learn something about me, maybe about us. And when I was in 30 years in college, political science student, I wrote an essay about sexual minorities in Russia, and I was criticizing heavily from the department staff, because our political, it's called the Faculty of History and Political Science. It's still conservative. And I made a revolution, literally a revolution inside the department, inside the faculty, and I started to bring it by small portions, this knowledge, information about people with different identity. And I chose my way. I decided to be a PhD student after graduated in 2007, when I defended my diploma, and High Commission from Moscow, they told us it's a very dangerous topic, but at the same time it's very necessary to be on the same place, on the same time, and to reveal some secret sides of the identity, because Russia is a very confusing country sometimes. In one sense, they try to accept and inherit Western lifestyle. They're jealous of Western countries and civilized countries, whatever, but they are afraid to take responsibility upon their shoulders. That's why this fear and hatred and anger circling around our country, actually. That's why when I took this position of PhD student, I chose the topic about homosexuality and how it works inside some political mainstreams, and how it is represented in public policy. But my supervisor told me that you wouldn't defend this PhD thesis, because it's very dangerous, especially in that time when Russian Orthodox Church raised their head, and they became very powerful institution, and they started to put inside the younger generation minds these ideas about superiority, about only one monotheist religion like Orthodoxy. But believe me, 80% people don't know what is Orthodox Church. because they just follow the trends, they just, the government tries to fool them, that's why it's just a fashion trend. It's trendy, it's not a real beliefs, it's not a real religion, it's an instrument, it's tool to control, to put people inside some small box and manage it, like 1984 Orwell's concept is completely the same now. And of course, I had to change my title. I had to change my focus. That's why I was studying. Minorities in terms of women as a political minority, ethnic minorities, and homosexuality. And homosexual people like a kind of minority. I don't like this word minorities because it's always you're entitled to get some special rights, but it's not.